Welcome to the S.J. Child Show, where a little bit of knowledge can turn fear into understanding. Enjoy the show. Hi, and welcome to the S.J. Child Show. I'm really excited today to get into this discussion with this guest, Barbara Ann Mojica. And I met her online, I believe. And so, right? I think that's where we meet so many people these days, so many connections. But her mission and service that she provides, or the work that she does, really interested me. And so I'm excited to bring her on as a guest today. So, Barbara, thanks so much for being here today.
Well, thank you, Sarah, and I'm really excited to meet some of your listeners.
Yeah, thank you so much. Well, tell us a little bit about yourself and kind of what brought you here.
Well, it's kind of a long journey. I always loved learning. I always loved school. So, yeah, I was kind of a nerd as a child. I loved reading. I loved finding out about people and places. And I grew up in a family that didn't have a lot of opportunity to travel at the time because my parents didn't have a lot of means. And that became one of my goals and missions in life, that I was going to travel and experience different cultures and meet people all over the world. But my particular passion has always been history. I loved the explorers. And back in the time when I went to elementary school, history was still being taught as an active subject. So we really did have a quote history class. And, history was separate from geography and everything else. But I went on and I worked my way into getting into college because at the time there was a public college system available based on merit. So if you worked hard and got the grades, you could get in. And I really was determined to get in. So I worked hard and I got into the system. So I went to Hunter College and I again immersed myself into everything. I was always in a hurry to get everywhere. So I took all kinds of courses to supplement my historical interests. So I took history of art and I took anthropology and I took classics and I took um, everything I could do, languages to build around it. And I wound up graduating in 3 years because I took a lot of courses during the summer. So I had another wonderful experience when one of my teachers from the summer classes put my name in for a scholarship. And I was blown away. I got awarded a scholarship for graduate school. So I went to graduate school for
Fantastic.
history and I got a master's degree. But when I got out, um, I continued taking courses and I was almost to the PhD level when this was another turn in my life career. The professor that I was working on with in my specialty left and moved to a college across country, and I couldn't follow him.
Mhm.
So uh, I there I was. So I had all of these history credits. I didn't want to become someone who just devoted myself to research. I loved historical research, but I didn't want to be one of these kind of academic ivory tower people because I loved working with people. So I went into education and I taught elementary school for more than 20 years before I became aware, very acutely aware over time, that so many kids weren't having their needs being met.
Mm.
And there were so many approaches to learning that I wasn't able to implement in that setting. So back to school again. I went back to school for master's and certification in special ed.
Mm.
And that started a whole new career in special ed. So I became a special ed teacher for uh, the preschool population,
Mm.
very young children with
Yeah.
very, very severe delays. So children with autism, Fragile X, crack cocaine babies,
Mm.
physical disabilities like
Yeah.
MS and CP. And I did that for a couple of years. When an opening came up for the principalship of the school in which I
Mm.
was teaching, but I didn't have administrative certification yet. So back to school for administrative certification, and I became principal of that school. And at the same time I was principal, I was also working one-on-one with children privately. So as an independent contractor, I was also working, and I learned ABA, um, and I did that. But another opportunity came up to be a school district administrator.
Mm.
So I took a position as a school district administration person who would be responsible for screening and developing the programs for
Mm.
special needs children. So this was
That's nice.
citywide, uh, within, well, a particular district within New York City. So I was the preschool special education administrator, and I worked with getting kids the placement. And I love that
Mm.
because I was able to work with
Yeah.
the parents, the technicians, the therapists, the speech therapists, the psychologists, all, as one cohesive team, trying to get kids what they really needed. And that was sometimes difficult, you know, all
Yeah.
of the forces at work, but
Yeah.
it was very gratifying at the same time. But another setback because there was a whole reorganization within the city, and they laid off half of the people who
Oh.
were in my area. And since I was one of the newer people, I got bounced. So back to teaching again. I wound up in a school teaching, itinerant teaching, doing team teaching,
Mm.
and doing also on my own time, continuing to work one-on-one with children, screening, testing, and
Yeah.
and developing programs. So I've had kind of a very long and winding career,
Journey.
as most people do. We have things that push us forward and things that hold us back, but if you
Yeah.
persist, eventually things turn out
Yeah, definitely.
fine.
Wow.
So that's the way it went. And now I'm retired from teaching. I moved out of the city. I live in a rural area in upstate New York, which I love. I had been coming here all my life, but I really, really love it. So my husband and I live up here, but uh, I devote myself now to trying to combine all of my passions. This long, winding story, but so I'm combining my love of history, and I'm combining that with all the experiences I've had
Mhm.
in education to try to help parents and teachers with tools and strategies to support learning, and to try to fix some of the things that I see kind of broken in the education system today.
Yeah.
And, just trying to do my part to pull it together and
Mm.
help
Awesome.
remedy some of those needs, both
Yeah.
for the children and for the parents.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that as well. That's we need help in all of those areas. And, our experience, my son is 13 now. He was diagnosed 16 months old with autism. Excuse me. And so we were in preschool was our preschool kindergarten were our favorite years of school. And it's because we got the most care and we got the most support
Hmm.
and the more guidance and direction. And it seemed that he would get the best therapies and services during that time in a school setting as well. And, he had the unique ability. He was reading at 1 and writing at 2, not yet verbal until about 4. But from 2 to 4, he was writing and we were able to communicate that way. And at 3, we recognized he had a photographic memory. And so by the time he was 4 and 5, he was doing algebra and learning other languages. And by the time we got to first grade, the principal said, we don't have a place for him here. I'm sorry. We can't teach him at the level he's at. And at the time, we didn't really have very many other schools, and especially, schools for autism in our city. And I just felt devastated that they didn't give him the chance to make a new program to fit his needs for him and then all the other children that would come after, because he wouldn't be the only one, you know. And I knew that, so I felt like really disservice from them. And besides my having a paralegal background, I didn't take things the legal route, which I could have, but I settled, and brought him home, homeschooled, and found a great online school that we could use. But like you said, there was so many problems. And now he's 13. He's basically phased out of high school. And we're looking into what steps are next. But putting him back into a school setting, it doesn't even seem realistic or like anything we could ever do. So frustrating, these
It
things.
is, it is, it is. And what my thing is, I really believe that the money should follow the child,
Yes.
not, dumping everything into the one size fits all
Mhm.
public education approach. And
Yeah.
and if you want to deviate that, then you're responsible for justifying, for
Mm.
giving the reasons as to why you should not want this wonderful system, this system
Mm.
that has been going backwards for the last 20 years. I mean, the United States
So
was at the
strange.
top, 20 years ago, and now we're somewhere down around number 20 worldwide in educational standards,
Mm.
and trying to get a population as diverse as that, not only in terms of learning abilities, but of cultural
Yeah. Yeah.
abilities in our country. There's such a diversity of culture uh, that it's just, impossible to have this common core
Hmm.
standardized. You must meet the standard and pass the test and expect to be able to develop a way to do that.
Mm.
Because even, when you have children from all of these cultural backgrounds trying to take a test, for instance, when you give them the reading test and present them with a paragraph that talks about customs, traditions, practices that are totally foreign to their country and background. So not only do they not have the language skills to come up to reading that,
Yeah.
but they don't have the cultural
Mhm.
background either. So,
How are they supposed to comprehend it and
how are they
then
supposed to?
process it and then spit it back out to them, right? Oh my goodness. Yeah. The expectations are wild and kind of unfounded for the way our society is blossoming, if you will, with neurodiversity. And there's so much more that needs to change. And I'm sure you have a lot to say about that, huh?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think the whole one of the biggest problems with the schools is that they're teaching what you should think, not
Mm,
how you should think. They
yes.
don't teach the process of
Yes.
thinking, of reasoning, of, when you study history, history is really based on one of the all disciplines to some degree are based on critical thinking knowledge,
Yeah.
but history, especially history and science, because you have to take information, you have to be able to focus on a problem, then you have to take information in. So you have to gather information. Now, with history, of course, you should be looking at the primary sources, the the sources that consider the actual documents, the letters, the journals, the writings, the archaeology, or
Mm,
whatever that physical evidence might be. But then you have to look at the context, what else was happening around it.
mm,
So you have to examine the other pieces of the puzzle, what was going on at the time, who else was involved, what were they doing, when were they doing it. You have to be able to figure out how people were communicating. Look at the way our communication has changed.
mm.
So when you study something that happened a couple of hundred years ago, you had no TV, you had no telegraph, you had no telephone. They were communicating, again, mostly with those primary sources, the letters, the journal, the physical evidence.
Yeah.
But today we don't have that. So what do kids do? Kids use the internet. They type in the question and they look to see, oh, page one. This is the answer. They don't go and look for the different possibilities.
Yeah. Yeah.
They just take the first one and, oh, that's the answer. Well, how do I know? Well, it's on the internet. It must be true,
Right.
Or even worse than that, sometimes they'll go to social media and they'll see what their friends are saying.
Yes,
Oh, my
right.
friends agree with this. This has got to be right. Well, this one says it, this one says it, this one says it. So we have to be right. There's a, but do they understand that they're being fed an algorithm that they're depending
Exactly.
on what they have looked at
Um,
previously, that's being reinforced and they're being given the information
yeah.
in that vein. So it's so frustrating.
Yeah.
They're not being taught how to infer, how
Mm,
to take that information and then take their own experiences
yeah.
and compare what they already know. I mean, they may say, well, we have this KWL model. What do I know? It's really not taught that way anymore.
Mhm.
It in very few instances, and there are schools that make an attempt uh, to do some of this, like they may have some kind of cooperative learning
Yeah.
where the students do get together and discuss. But that's being more and more pushed out
Mm,
because more and more of the time is spent on the testing. They fall further behind, the test scores are
yeah.
lower. So now we have to spend more time on the testing. And who develops these tests? Corporate interests who are involved with the grant money that goes to the school. So, it's just kind of like this whole
Mhm.
vicious cycle. And I think
Yeah.
with COVID, parents who spent very little time in the school
Mm.
suddenly saw exactly what their kids were learning.
Yeah.
And a lot of them were not very happy to see what their kids were learning.
Yeah.
And they've woken up to, which is that what if anything good came out of COVID, that was one of the best things that came out of it, an
Yeah.
awareness of what was going on in the
Mm.
educational system and this has been going on for quite some time.
Yeah, definitely.
So we spend a lot of time on, the quote social emotional skills and then we spend a lot of time on the testing and we spend a lot of time on teaching development programs, staff training. I know toward the end of my career, I was pulled out of the classroom left and right well, we have a teacher training for this. We have a teacher train, and this was all done during school time. So
Mm.
then, what happens? There's a substitute teacher in the classroom. You're being pulled out even more, and
Kids
then
are
what
getting
happens?
further behind.
Half the time, they throw out this new program.
Mm.
I
Oh,
we I
goodness.
had an experience with a multi-million-dollar computer program that was being developed that was going to be put into all of the schools. It didn't work. 1 year after, they threw it
Mm.
out. They just threw it out. So there is so much waste.
Yeah.
It's just
And it's too bad
very
it's on our
frustrating.
kids, on their time, if you will, for them to be learning. And yeah, it's definitely so different than
And
when I was a kid.
I don't mean to put all the onus on the teachers either, because uh, the teachers are pulled in so many directions.
Yeah.
First of all, if they're in a large city, they have the teachers unions to deal with. Uh, and they have administration. The administration in schools has grown exponentially.
Mhm.
So now in some cases, there are a lot more administrators than there are teachers
Mm.
in a school district. So again, where are the priorities? And the administrators are pulled by all different kinds of forces. They want to get a
Yeah.
grant, then they have to follow the dictates of the grant money. They want money from the federal government, they need to follow the dictates of the federal government. So they're being pulled in all directions too. And teachers need to get tenure. And if they don't do it the way the administration tells them to do it, you teach it this way and you teach it this way only. And I found that when I was trying to deal with a team teaching class, the administrator just didn't understand that I shouldn't be teaching it the same way the general ed teacher was teaching it. And no, she said, you have to do it this way. And
Yeah.
my kid couldn't learn it that way. So it's terribly frustrating. And I think that parents should fight for the ability and the opportunity to choose what kind of education works best for them,
Yeah.
whether it be a homeschool or whether it be like a homeschool co-op where
Yeah.
parents get together and give the children somewhat of a regular school experience, not
Yeah.
just the setting in the home, or charter schools, which are wonderful.
Yeah.
Letting children explore different areas of interest, because my own children were involved in some of that. One of mine
Yeah.
went to a magnet school that had uh, arts training. So he learned about arts and music, was able to learn how to play a musical instrument, was able to learn how a recording studio worked, was
Mm.
able to get rudimentary instruction in art, drawing. And all of that was an enrichment experience in addition to the regular elementary school curriculum. So
Yeah.
there are all kinds of opportunities. Vocational training.
Mm.
Why aren't we spending more money on
Mm.
vocational training? We
So
are so far behind in manufacturing. We
yeah.
need, there are so many kids that are interested in aviation or
Mm.
automotive or plumbing, electrical, whatever it may be. Why aren't we spending more money instead of telling them you have to go to college? Why aren't we allowing them to pursue what could be a wonderful career for them
Mhm.
and would feed their interest as
Yeah,
well? So,
exactly. Exactly. So many things. So many things need to change. And, what would you say? I mean, and you said, parents fight for their own kind of how their kids learn and go to school. What are some ways that you would say we could take steps to do that?
well, first of all, you have to be active in the PTA
Mm.
or whatever, whatever kind of parent in organization there is in the school, whether it be private or public. You really have to go to those meetings and I was involved in both of them. In fact, there was one point where I had one child who was going to high school in one borough, and I had another child who was going to middle school in another borough. They both had parent teacher conferences on the same night, and I took, I did it. I made an early appointment in one place. I made a late appointment in the other. I mean, it involves
Yeah.
a lot of work, and parents, of course, are very, very busy. But these are your kids.
Yep.
I mean, you have to do it. You have to make it your priority.
Yep.
So that's one thing, any kind of parent teacher organization. So you will find out more about what is actually going on
Yeah.
in the school. And then you have to be proactive in the administration by checking out what programs are available in your school district. And that isn't always, they don't always want to make it very accessible, but you go to the district office, you find out. And I know I was at one district office so often that the deputy superintendent thought I worked there. He's
Oh.
like, "Oh, hi, how are you today?"
That is funny.
Because I kept going and I
Yeah.
kept going. I was trying to get an opening for my son into that charter school program. And at the time, he wasn't in a public school. He was in a private school. So I was really like low man on the totem pole. They were going to
Hmm.
give it to the kids that were already in the system. So I just kept going there. I kept just showing up and saying, "Oh, are there any openings yet? Has anything changed?" And
Yeah.
you have to really be proactive. And if you think your child has been placed in the wrong program, and I'm talking more about special ed now,
Yeah.
you got to go there and you've got to make yourself heard.
Hmm.
You've got to say that, not meeting my child's needs. Now you can get the special ed teacher uh, to try to, get back up, or depending on which therapist the child sees, whether it's a speech therapist or a PT or an OT. And if you get them together and put pressure
Mm.
on, you will be able to get the program. And I did take that way beyond in a couple of cases, and I advised parents uh, to go the legal route, and it,
Hmm.
it would cost the city $10,000 every time the parent brought a formal appeal, uh, but would have to provide an attorney for the parent if the parent couldn't afford to have one. And I got this one child into the school. There was only one school that was really appropriate for this child because he had very specialized speech needs.
Yeah.
And all of the other schools that were available for placement really weren't going to meet that. And the placement was out of district. In fact, it was out of the city, and he would have to be bused
Yeah.
from his home. But the parent persisted. She was with me. She says, "So if you think we can do it," we got
Yeah.
him into that school,
Mhm.
and he did marvelous. I mean, he just flourished
Fantastic.
there.
I love
But
that.
it's a long slog,
Yeah.
but you
Yeah.
have to you have to be willing
Mm.
to do it. But persist, just finding out what's there and just ask, ask, ask. Now today, of course, we have almost everything available on the internet, so it may even be, a little bit easier,
Mm.
not so much physical running around, but
Yeah.
you have to if you show them that you're serious, they will eventually work with you.
Yeah, definitely. Well, and I really like to, I mean, I've been, you know, doing IEP meetings since 2012. So I've been to plenty of them. And I always love to tell parents, the very first thing they should do. Obviously, they come prepared with the documents and or a list of accommodations that you know your child is going to need. Look up what accommodations, like you had said, what programs and resources are available for that child, and what types of things you can apply for or sign up for. And then I love to tell them, go in with the idea and give the administration the idea that they're on the team with you, that this is a team process and we're going to do this together, and really to be the best to get them on your side, kind of a thing. Because I always hate to hear the stories of parents and schools going to battle with one another. And I always think it's so important that you right away get the teacher or the LEA, whatever you have available, to be, just on your side with you and just say, hey, we're going to do
Yeah.
this together.
Usually, I mean, most of the time that route works,
Yeah.
by,
Oh,
you go
most
to
of the
the
time.
speech,
Yeah.
if it's primarily a speech issue, you go to the speech therapist and work with them
Yeah.
and, how can they best write things up to make the administration understand in a very nice way that,
Yeah.
well, hey, we really don't have this available here, so we're going to have to go here to,
Mm-hmm.
to get this particular
Yeah.
service. Of course, there's other outside issues too, like insurances and,
Mm.
all kinds of outside forces. But I firmly believe that if you are persistent, in most cases,
Yeah.
you'll succeed in what getting to what you need.
Yeah, definitely. Well, and our son, like I said, is home now, and we'll find out what the next step is. But we do have a daughter in charter school who has autism and dyslexia diagnosis. So we're still hitting the IEP meetings and getting those needs met, and accommodations made for her. So it's not over yet for me. Still have some years ahead, but that's okay. Like I love these kind of conversations where I can learn so much about more steps that I can't take, more people that I can get in touch with. I've really haven't been too involved with her school this year, other than with the teacher herself, which she's been fantastic, and she's just really put so much effort and intention into helping my daughter have the best learning experience. So that's been really lucky because you don't always have that
Absolutely. No, you
that
don't
experience.
always,
So yeah.
unfortunately. And the other really important thing I would stress is the early diagnosis. If
Yeah.
you know, there are so many parents that are in denial and, well, maybe she'll grow out of it. Maybe he'll grow out. Oh, he's just a little bit delayed in this, and
Yeah.
as early as possible. I've even worked with pre preemie babies, doing an evaluation of a baby, for instance, born at like 28 weeks, and then a follow-up uh, evaluation when they're like 6 months old, and just to make sure that everything's going
Yeah.
well. And there's no real, stigma attached
Yeah.
to it. I mean, you are trying to get the best for your child from the very
Mm.
beginning. So,
Yeah.
why wouldn't you want to have an evaluation? In
Yeah.
so many cases, children that have early intervention don't need any kind of
Yep.
intervention by the time
Later
they
on.
get
Yeah.
to school
It's
age.
so,
But
so true. So important. Well, and I heard something the other day, or saw something online that said something to the effect of, either label me with the correct label, like autism, ADHD, or otherwise I'll be labeled bad behaving, overactive, drama queen. Like, what? You don't want your kids to have those kinds of labels. Like, give them the chance to be self-identified and let them, the teachers and the peers, understand how to better serve them and support them. And I think that that is like you said, so many parents are like have in denial or have an idea that there's a stigma, and we're doing away with that. We're doing away with those things. We want our kids to have the best experiences. With that comes with honesty and facing reality, right? And reality looks different for every single person. But the more we close our eyes to it or imagine that it is some other way, the more disservice we're doing to that child and their experiences.
We sure are. And, I talk about the critical thinking skills, but I also talk about, you know, along with that go these what I call creative life skills. And in that respect, parents are, I would say, 90% responsible for teaching those things. While the schools may reinforce some of them, uh, this is what they learn in the home. So the things like respect and honesty and having empathy for others, being kind and compassionate and uh, just basic skills like learning how to take turns, getting along with siblings. And that's very difficult when you have children with special needs. Especially if you have a child with special needs and then you have a typically developing child alongside, that can be very difficult. But if you set the example of this is how we do things in our family, you set up the routines, you set up the boundaries, you
Yeah.
teach those creative life skills, then you've won half the battle because you've already put into force the foundation,
Mm, I love that.
and
So true.
hopefully that will be reinforced to some degree
Yeah.
in the schools. They spend a lot of time on this social emotional stuff,
Right.
which may or may not be valuable. In some
Yeah.
cases, it may be doing more harm
Mm.
than good. Trying to impose, a uh, society. It's not cultural. It's for trying to enforce a society's view of the
Mm.
way things should be, which may or may not be true for your family,
So that is
depending on your,
100%. Yes.
depending on your cultural beliefs, your religious beliefs, the ethnic group from which you came, and the values that are placed higher or lower on the scale depending on that group. So it really is the parents' responsibility, not the school's responsibility. And
Mhm.
uh, they've gone to some extremes with that, with some schools not even wanting the parents to know what's going on, which is, I find,
Outright,
just like
outlandish. Yeah.
just find incredible that any parent would tolerate that. But
Mm. Yeah,
which is
it's
another reason
so
for
true.
parents having that's going to those PTA meetings and going to
Mhm.
those school board meetings
Yes, exactly.
as well.
Oh. Well, it has been so wonderful getting to know you and learning, more about kind of your views on, and you have so much experience and value to share with those. So thank you so, so much for that. What are some ways we could support you, or do you have a website and all of the good things? Where do we find these wonderful books? Where it says wherever books are sold, of course. So,
Well, yeah. Well, the books are history, but they also involve many, many other disciplines because everything in the world has a history, right? So we
Mm,
have to know where we came from in order to understand how we got to where we are today, and
yeah.
then how to use that knowledge to build a better framework for the future, hopefully. So the books are history, but some of them are iconic places like the Statue of Liberty or Mount Rushmore. Others are more global. So some of the books are on military history, like the Intrepid Sea, Air, and Space Museum. Uh, the North Pole book talks about the Arctic, the animals of the Arctic,
That's
the
neat.
countries. There were 8 countries that claim territory in the Arctic.
Hmm.
So we talk about country, we talk about uh, the customs and traditions, we talk about literature, like how the whole story of Santa Claus got started and how
Hmm.
that was involved. So there are nature books, like I have La Brea Tar Pits, and we talk about fossils and archaeology and how you can visit the site where the scientists are still working
Hmm.
uncovering the fossils today. And Sequoia National Park, we talk about the beautiful sequoia and redwood trees and how they grow, uh, who settled in the park, the animals that live in the park. So they're very multidisciplinary. And the idea in my books is to use critical thinking to have the child involved interactively and to ask their opinions on things like Native American rights and African American rights and the environment,
Hmm.
all kinds of questions that I involve
Love that.
them with. So those are the books Little Miss History Travels To, and the character who narrates is a cartoon character based on a younger version of me,
Hmm.
this, teenager who aspired to
I
become
love
the world
that.
traveler and
Yeah.
explorer. And I hope that they will kind of see a part of themselves in the
Yeah.
character to become more immersed and involved in the
Hmm.
stories. So those are the books. Then I have a YouTube channel. And during
Wonderful.
COVID, especially, I got involved with doing more online work since I wasn't getting out to meet
Yeah.
kids individually. So I have 2-minute teacher lessons. So on all different subjects, not just history, and things like the difference between a fact and an opinion, critical thinking
Hmm. Love
lessons,
that.
science, math, history, everything. I have kids' videos on there, kids' history videos. And I have a blog where I give
Hmm.
tips to parents, to teachers, to authors, some of my experiences in writing along the way. I have Pinterest board and I collect resources. So I collect curriculum resources
Hmm.
for parents
Love that.
that they might want to use depending on, you know, what they were interested in. So I kind of do all of those things. And my website is kind of the jumping off point. So if you go to the website, www.littlemisshistory.com. I have links to everything. So they can
Perfect.
chat with me, they can email me, they can go to the YouTube channel, they can go to the blog, they can even see some of the podcasts on the YouTube channel.
Awesome.
Uh, Go to the Pinterest board if they're looking for something. Maybe they'll find it on the Pinterest board.
It's
So
wonderful.
it's kind of like a one-stop,
Perfect.
hopefully.
I love that. Oh, thank you so much, Barbara. It's been so nice getting to know you, and I'd love to invite you back to, talk about some more topics. And I
Oh,
think
sure. I
you're a
would love to
plethora of
anytime.
information. So it's fantastic. Thank you so, so much. And yeah, it's been a wonderful conversation, and I look
Mhm.
forward to staying in touch with you.
Thank you. Bye bye for now.